Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Down, your host, and very delighted to introduce our next guest, Tiffany Noone, a dedicated homesteader and devout Catholic. Tiffany and her family have been living sustainably on their 21-acre farm for the past 6 years. She's passionate about raising livestock, gardening, and fostering a strong sense of community. She's also author and illustrator of her new book, Nanny's Garden. And without further ado, good morning, Tiffany. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, for those out there who might not be familiar, tell us a little about yourself and how you came to start Fernwoods Farm.
Okay. Well, like you said, we live on 21 acres in the woods, and I am a wife and a mom, and we have 4 kids, and we homeschool and we homestead. We raise Nigerian dwarfs, goats and geese and ducks and rabbits and chickens and all the things. And we started this kind of homestead journey about 6 years ago. And we just kind of never looked back.
Nice. Was there a particular moment or experience that you're like, okay, we need to just go out and start this homesteading?
Yeah. There were a few. There were a lot of times where, we would just be sitting and my husband and I would be talking and saying, like, this just doesn't feel us. We used to live in a neighborhood. There were a lot of rules and regulations to that. We weren't having a cow in our backyard, and it's frowned upon in neighborhoods. And we really wanted to be able to give our kids this quintessential childhood. We wanted to be able to say, go play, and really mean go play, go get dirty, go skin your knees, go explore, climb trees, do all the things. And we just wanted to have this kind of a slower pace. And we had just remodeled our kitchen. It was our dream kitchen in this neighborhood. It was everything that I wanted. And I love to cook and be in the kitchen. And I was like, of course, right now would be the time that, we feel this calling, right?
Oh, goodness.
So we started looking at all these properties, and I started learning a little bit more about homesteading, because at the time I didn't even realize that was what it was that I was feeling called to do. And we just knew we wanted land, and we knew we wanted space. And we found this log cabin in the woods, and we over time have had the opportunity to purchase more land surrounding us. And we have collected more and more animals, and it's become a bit of a circus, but a fun one. And it's been really wonderful. So that was one of the motivating things, just having all those conversations and feeling like we feel like there's something else out there for us that we're supposed to be doing. And then another one was that I was pretty sick for a while, and I had this really bad autoimmune disease, and it was just completely holding me down. I had really bad arthritis. I was very sick. Couldn't walk sometimes. And I knew I needed this big change. And so I completely changed the way that I ate. I went from vegetarian to animal based. I completely changed where we lived. And I decided I'm not doing this rat race. I'm not running around all the time. We're not over planning all of our stuff. We're not doing all these things. We're being more intentional, and we're slowing down, and we're really trying to create this home and this experience for our kids where we're taking them out of that, like, this is what we should be doing, and really be able to center our lives around God and around being stewards of our land.
Wow. Yeah. And I know I'm thinking this, I'm sure our listeners are as well. Like, I heavily dislike HOAs, and you can't let your kids just roam around the neighborhood anymore without that fear of whatever may happen.
Right.
It's just not what it used to be. It's very attractive. Now, how does your Catholic faith play a role in your homesteading practices?
Oh gosh. Well, there's a whole bunch of things. I think that we're really consecrating our work to God. We're making our work holy by being stewards of the land, and they're gifts that that God has given us. And it's an honor to be able to care for this land and to care for these animals.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It just really kind of brings you back to the basics. And that's something that you probably also intertwine with your Catholic faith. Like you start to do these things that our ancestors did, and you're like, oh, wow, like, what about the Catholic Mass that our ancestors used to do as well? Well, hey, you're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we are talking with Tiffany Noone at Fernwoods Farm. Now, for our listeners that might be living out there in the suburbs, maybe in the city, that aren't really ready to make the jump to full-on homesteading life, what are some ways that they can implement part of this lifestyle into their own homes?
Well, we didn't really start out wanting to do full-blown homesteading. So it was just like a little bit at a time. And then it has become this gigantic snowball. So I will tell you that once you start homesteading, no, can't stop, won't stop. It's a bit of a thing. Have you ever heard of chicken math?
Chicken math? I don't think I have.
Yeah. So it's a common phrase in homesteading where it's like you have one or two chickens and you're like, oh, this is great. And then you're like, well, I'll just get a couple more. And then I get a couple more. And then you have 30 chickens. And that is exactly what happened to me. But something that, I talk about a lot on my Instagram page is I think people think that if you're a homesteader, that means you need to have a farm and you need to have a cow and you need to have acres and acres and acres. And you don't. I did homesteading things when I lived in Baltimore City. I had a bunch of plants on my rooftop deck. I did cooking and baking, and you can go to the farmer's market. If you don't have space, you can go to the farmer's market and get that food, and you can still can things that you buy from other farmers. It doesn't have to be your produce. We do a lot of things with buying locally and, getting our meat that we're not raising from somebody that lives right down the road. So those are all really easy ways to kind of slowly get into it. Some people really enjoy beekeeping. I have a friend that's a beekeeper, and he and his wife always tell me that is a retirement plan. That's very involved. So it's on my list, but we've got about like 20 other things that we do. But what's great with like the homestead community is you can learn so much and ask pretty much any homesteader, and they will be thrilled to take you under their wing. And if you're like, I want to learn about whatever, if somebody comes over and they're like, tell me about chickens. I'm like, oh, please let me tell you about chickens. I will make sure that you're getting some by the end of this talk.
That's so funny. And now that I understand what chicken math is, I start to see very small portions of it, because every time we go to this Ace Hardware, our hardware store, they sell chickens. Well, they sell baby chickens, whatever you call them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And my daughter just loves to look at them. I'm like, well, someday we'll just have to buy them and just hide them from the HOA. I don't know how we'll do it. We'll figure it out, I'm sure.
Like sometimes you have parameters where you can have, like around here, if you live in the city, you can have up to 6 chickens, just no roosters. So sometimes people think they can't have them, but
interesting.
Not written.
Check your local laws and HOA rules. That's a great tip there.
It's a little under the thing, but you can always have rabbits. They're really quiet.
Oh, well, there you go. The rabbits. So you all are also a author and illustrator of a rather new book, Nanny's Garden. What is that all about?
So it is a children's book, and this is it. And I wrote and illustrated it, and it's a story. It's told from the perspective of me as a young girl, and I grew up in my grandmother's garden, and she was kind of the original homesteader before homesteading was a term that people used. And she was a homemaker, and she spent her days, and she was, growing all of her produce and growing everything and canning everything and making everything from scratch. And I just grew up with all that. And it was this wonderful, wonderful experience for me growing up. So I wanted to put that into a book and kind of normalize that for kids.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, normalize normal, I guess you would call it. Like it's a really great kind of going back to the roots of what we were doing so many years ago, and not that long ago. Wow. That is so cool. So obviously we can follow you at Fernwoods Farm on Instagram. Where else can we find more information about homesteading and your book?
Yeah. Well, my website is fernwoodsfarm.com, and it is through Sawdust Publishing. So you can go on there. The book's on Amazon. So I hope you give it a read.
Awesome. Well, we have just a few moments before the segment ends. Any lasting words of advice you'd like to give our listeners before they start their day?
In the way of homesteading, I would say just do it. Just start a little bit at a time. And I think it is a wonderful practice to be able to have homesteading and also your faith intertwined, because it all goes together. And it's this beautiful this beautiful medley of everything that I think God wants for us.
Wow, so good. Yeah, this whole show's been about body and soul, and homesteading can certainly fall into those categories, because with your body, like you mentioned, you're eating more whole foods and eating like meat that's not from other countries or questionable areas, and then
or fake.
Or fake, yeah. And then soul, like grounding yourself. We're like inside buildings with unnatural lighting, so this is very inspiring. Wow, thank you so much, Tiffany, for joining us. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Truth and Joy. God bless, and make it a joyful day.